Okay, so get ready because we're really going deep today. Looks like you've been getting your hands dirty with some seriously interesting research.
You could say that again.
Black markets, outlaw empires, you name it.
Yeah, you haven't just dipped your toes and you've practically gone swimming in this stuff.
It's impressive.
It's really quite something to see someone dive into both the historical records and the recent reports like you have.
Well, you know me, I can't resist a good space crime story.
Who can, right?
But let's start with the elephant in the room, or should I say the cocktail bar in space. I mean, the variety of substances you've uncovered is mind-blowing. Widow, slam, maze. It's a whole new meaning to out of this world, right?
Right, and it's not just the variety, it's what it tells us
About
the people. Living out here in the fringes of UE space. Take slam, for example. It's a fast-acting stimulant, popular with the space dock workers, asteroid miners.
the ones who need that extra jolt.
Exactly. Then you've got your naturally occurring psychedelics, like maze.
Heard some wild stories about that one.
Yeah, unpredictable effects, to say the least,
Yeah.
but potentially profound experiences. But the one that I always find fascinating is neon.
Oh, yeah. Didn't that start as a treatment for CPTSD?
It did. It did. A way to help people cope with trauma, but it's become a recreational drug.
And that says a lot, doesn't it?
It does. It makes you think, is it just escapism or is there something more? Are people this desperate to self-medicate? Is UE space really that unforgiving?
I mean, those are some pretty heavy questions.
Yeah, not easy answers.
Definitely not a quick fix.
No, this goes way deeper than that. And speaking of deep, you flagged Widow, or WDW.
Oh, yeah, the Black Widow herself, Khalil O'Brien. Her story's tragic, you know? A cautionary tale, if I've ever heard one.
And sadly not unique. Widow is highly addictive, hence the nickname, I guess. But what's interesting is the debate surrounding it.
Crackdown versus legalization.
Exactly. And it's not just here in UEE space, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It is.
Because on the one hand, you want to get this stuff off the streets.
Right.
But on the other hand, addiction.
It's a health issue.
Exactly. So what do you do? Where do you even start?
Well, that's the million credit question, isn't it? Stricter control, harsher punishment. It might deter some, but it could just drive it all further underground.
And then what?
It becomes even more dangerous, right? Then there's the argument for legalization.
Regular.
Yeah, focus on harm reduction, treatment. You might even remove that criminal element that thrives in the dark.
It really makes you think about the role of government, right?
Yeah.
Are they the enforcers or are they the protectors?
Big questions.
Big questions. We could debate that one all day, but we've got a lot more ground to cover. Because it's not just about the substances themselves.
Right.
You've also got smuggling rings, even something called sentient trading. I'm not even sure I've heard that term before.
It's not a term you want to hear.
No.
No. Essentially, it's slavery, the buying and selling of intelligent beings.
Wow.
It's outlawed, of course, by the UEE and the Xi'an, for that matter.
Of course.
But it still happens. They disguise it as indentured servitude. But these contracts...
They're designed to trap people.
Exactly. It's
a dark thought. Yeah. Thinking about someone, some being, treated as a commodity. And, you know, when you talk about operating outside the law, you highlighted this group, the Drop Kings.
Oh, yeah.
What a story. Started as activists fighting against the messers, ended up smuggling kingpins.
Talk about a turnaround, right?
It's like something out of a space opera. But it just shows, I guess, how a change in circumstances, how that can push even the most idealistic down a different path.
They were forced into hiding, opposed the messers, so they turned to smuggling to survive.
It makes sense.
And then somewhere along the line, they went from survivalists to, well, kingpins.
I mean, you got to admire the hustle.
You do.
But I mean, they set up shop in Charts.
Interesting choice.
Right. It's a former mining station.
Yeah. Perfect for keeping a low profile.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder, you know, did the messers, did their iron grip, did that create the demand for a place like Char?
Interesting question. Or would a place like Char always spring up? Laws or no laws?
I mean, that's a question for the ages.
It is. Chicken or the egg, right?
Right. But you know what I find even more fascinating than the stuff being traded?
What?
The people doing the trading. These outlaw groups with their own codes and their reputations. It's like a whole other world.
It is.
Like the fire rats
Yeah.
out in the pyro system, worshiping the sun. Now that's dedication.
That's putting your money where your mouth is when it comes to fire and brimstone.
Right. And then you've got the Nova Riders blasting thrash metal while they pull off their heists.
Yeah, there's something else.
Kind of cool, though, right?
I mean, if you're going to go outside the law.
Gotta have a soundtrack.
Exactly. But it's fascinating how these groups use it all. The rituals, the symbols, the music.
Creates a brand.
Yeah, it's like a shared purpose.
Yeah.
Even in a world as chaotic as the criminal underworld, it's almost
Tribal.
exactly.
But like you said, it is a family reunion gone wrong, right? Because some of these groups, they don't exactly play nice. You mentioned this rivalry between the headhunters and the drop kings. What a clash. And the prize in the middle of it all. Ruin Station. What makes Ruin Station so special?
Ruin Station is all about control. It's not just the profits, it's who dictates the flow of everything. The goods, the information, even the people.
So it's not just a station, it's a power base.
Exactly. Whoever holds Ruin Station, they basically hold the keys to the kingdom. You can challenge the authorities from there, maybe even
Become the dominant force?
Maybe.
And, I mean, talk about power. We can't forget about individuals in all of this. Like Keller. Keller's run. It's insane. One guy sparking a system-wide manhunt.
He caused so much chaos.
It really highlights the challenge of governing a place as vast as UEE space, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, even with all the tech, law enforcement, they can't be everywhere at once.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder, what was going through Keller's mind? What would drive someone to do something like that?
Freedom, maybe? Or infamy? It's hard to say.
It's like trying to read a data drive that's been corrupted. But, you know, while we're on the topic of the individuals that shape this world, we have to talk about the violence. You mentioned Neville Lott, and honestly, even saying his name sends shivers down my spine.
He was a piece of work, that's for sure.
It makes you wonder, where do people like that come from?
It's the age-old question, right? Are some people just born bad, or are they a product of their environment?
Both.
Maybe. But either way, it's a chilling thought.
It is. It makes you question everything. And speaking of questioning everything, groups like Xenothreat, they're more than just criminals. They're
dangerous.
Exactly. They take advantage of fear, resentment,
They weaponize it.
and they're good at it.
Scary good.
It's like they're a symptom of a much larger problem, one that we haven't figured out how to solve yet.
And one that we can't ignore.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of terrifying when you think about it.
It is, isn't it?
I mean, we started with black market cocktails. Now we're talking about, like, the collapse of society.
It's all connected, though. These things we think are isolated, these groups operating in the shadows, they're not isolated. They tell a story. They paint a picture.
A very bleak picture.
Well, a revealing one, at least. It's like we took a look inside, behind the curtain of a space thriller, and what did we find?
A mess.
A cautionary tale. About the human condition. About what happens when things break down.
And what happens?
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out, right?
Right.
What happens when a society doesn't take care of its people? What happens when you let fear and resentment just fester?
It's a recipe for disaster, that's for sure.
Exactly. And these aren't just questions for UEE space.
No.
No, these are universal questions.
It's a lot, you know, this whole deep dive. But I gotta say, it's been eye-opening. I always thought of these outlaw groups, these smugglers, as, I don't know, just bad apples.
Right.
But they're not, are they? They're a symptom of something much bigger.
It's about perspective, isn't it? You start to see the patterns, the cause and effect.
You start to see the bigger picture.
Exactly. And once you see it, you realize these aren't problems you can just arrest your way out of.
So what do we do? Where do we even start?
Awareness. Recognizing that the line between order and chaos, it's thinner than we think.
And then?
We ask the tough questions, the ones that make us uncomfortable, the ones that challenge everything we think we know.
We can't just bury our heads in the sand.
Nope. We have to shed some light on these dark corners, even if we don't like what we see.
Because maybe, just maybe, if we understand why people do these things, why they step outside the lines,
we can start to erase those lines, create a galaxy with a little less darkness.
That's a nice thought.
It is, isn't it?
A galaxy with a little less darkness. Well, I know I've got a lot to think about.
Me too.
From black markets to, well, the fate of humanity.
It's a never-ending journey, isn't it? Trying to understand the universe.
It really is. Well, on that note, this has been quite the deep dive. As always, a pleasure.
Your pleasure was all mine.